Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NFL Strategy Show, Showdown Edition, presented by Jock Market. I'm Dave Loughran. Along with me, as always, Matt Gajeski at Matt_Gajeski. And for the first time this season, running it back after a successful 2020, Alex Brown, former DN for the Chicago Bears, over on Twitter at AlexBrown96. AB, what's going on, man? Glad to have you back.
Absolutely, my man. This was super exciting last year. Hopefully, I can win a little bit more money this year. I love this. This is
you
awesome.
You took down an MLB tournament a little while ago, though.
I did. Thanks to my guys on Adam, man. Adam is freaking awesome, man. You know what? I want a hat signed by Adam. Like, seriously. I do. I really do. Like, it's crazy. I watch him all the time. He's awesome. I love like picking through like what he's saying and listening to how he breaks down a game or matchups. It's awesome.
No one looks more miserable at doing something they love than Adam Scher.
Yes, and he'll mind saying whatever it is on his mind. I think that's why I love him so much.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you go deep into our DMs and things get real ugly. That guy has no filter, but it's a beautiful thing. Anyway, Matt, what's going on, dude? We've got the Giants and the Washington football team, which I still just even writing it, I can't get you. I just put WFT at this point. Giants at football team looks weird. But Giants have an 18.5 point implied total, 22 for Washington. Low total, Thursday night football, short rest for Barkley. We got a lot to get into.
Yeah, AB and I were talking about this before the show. It's kind of a weird game already in week 2 because of all the injuries we have to both teams. New York really struggled. They really struggled in their offensive line. Barkley didn't play as much as maybe some people thought he would. It's kind of a disaster for both teams because then the football team lost their starting quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick. So how are these teams looking coming on a short week into week 2? And for New York, it's going to be a hostile environment going on the road to play Washington.
Yeah. And the no Fitzpatrick is significant too. I mean, Heineke wasn't awful, but they still ran the ball 20 times to Gibson in a loss, 5 targets, 25 total looks. I think we're going to see a lot of Gibson today. That might be later in the show, as you can see on the sidebar, where my best bets will be coming in. We'll see. But we'll also build a lineup for a tournament. We'll go around the horn here and throw some players in. Matt, one more thing though before we dive into this. The Thursday night or Monday night football game, there's no way we top that from the insanity of it, right? Like from Brian Edwards being down at the goal line and the ref going, the game is not over, and then the players are like, all right, that's a wrap. You know, let's jump onto the field. And then they come back and almost lose the game on an interception. Just everything about that game was nuts. I don't think we get that today, but I do think there are some really interesting strategy points that we can dive into on a showdown slate.
Yeah, I think so too. And that game was crazy exciting. I mean, tons of points everywhere. Ravens offensive line struggled. Their defense struggled at times. I don't think we get that kind of game. I think it's going to be crazy for other reasons, maybe in the way that it's probably just not going to play out like you expect. And there's a lot of uncertainty heading into the game, which I personally think makes it interesting. I know it might not necessarily be the most exciting game with the Giants disappointing in week 1 and the Washington football team without their starting quarterback on the other side. But these are situations I love to target for DFS, especially.
You know, AB, if we kick it off with the Giants here, if this was a Sunday game, I'd feel pretty confident after Barkley played almost 50% of the snaps that we were going to see a lot of him today with them going down 0-1 to start the year. But yeah, he played almost 50% of snaps. Devontae Booker played 39%. But now Barkley's on essentially 3 days rest coming off of an ACL injury. He's questionable, but expected to play. What do you think we see out of him today, just in terms of workload? Because this is going to be a huge piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very similar to what you saw this past Sunday, honestly, if not less, because he is coming off that short week. If he was healthy, I mean, you play him. I mean, you don't have Barkley out there for 50% of the plays and he only gets the ball 10 times. So you're just out there. He's just out there as a decoy, I guess, right now. And against this football team, I think we all understand that this defense is the real deal. So, and they got beat up pretty good this past Sunday by the Chargers. So they're going to come in and they're going to be ready to punish somebody. And Saquon better not be on the track because he's going to get smoked. This defense is serious.
They are. And AB, that's another thing I worry about, right? If you're the Giants, is when you look at last year, I mean, one of the biggest weaknesses was pass blocking. They were ranked, according to PFF, they graded out dead last in pass blocking. Run blocking, they ranked 23rd. I know they've tried to make some improvements to the offensive line, but against I mean, it was amazing how well the Chargers line held up last week. Herbert was pressured at the lowest clip in the league, but if the Giants aren't able to do anything remotely close to that, and I don't think they will, this could be an insanely long day for Daniel Jones and for Saquon Barkley on the ground. Do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's going to be insanely – it's going to be a difficult day for everybody on offense for the New York Giants. You look at what Herbert and those guys are able to do. You got a pissed off Washington football team now. I'm telling you, they're going to come in. And Von Miller was all over the quarterback last week. This defensive line for Washington football team is probably the scariest in the NFL. You can go to San Francisco and look at them a little bit, but I'm telling you, these guys get after the quarterback. They disappointed last week. They're going to look to make amend to that. So if they get 6 sacks, they're not going to surprise me. What would surprise me is that the Giants are still throwing the football. Like that's what would surprise me. But if you get down, what are you going to do? And you don't have Saquon, so you got to throw it. And this defense just gets more and more opportunities to make plays.
Matt, how worried should we be about this offensive line, both as in run blocking and pass protection?
Extremely worried. I think coming into the year, they wanted that the second-year player, Matt Pert, to win the tackle job, but he just didn't. So they're having to play Nate Solder out there. And he just, as AB mentioned, he just got worked last week. Andrew Thomas hasn't quite been as good as maybe some people thought he was coming out of Georgia. He's still a young player, so I think there's hope for him moving forward. But I almost think the Giants should play in 12 personnel with 2 tight ends most of the time here to try to chip these edges for Washington. Like AB mentioned, everyone knows Chase Young, but Montez Sweat on the other side is no joke either. You have guys like Matt Ioannidis playing a depth role at this point. This is one of the best, if not the single best defensive line in the NFL. It might be the single biggest mismatch we've seen between D-line, O-line the entire year.
So how do we approach the running back position then? Obviously tournament strategy differentiates from cash strategy, and then even small field tournaments, right? Like some of these single entry tournaments that you'll see a lot of on DraftKings and FanDuel. But just overall, I don't feel comfortable or confident in really any of these backs. If Barkley was cheaper, I think maybe we could lean a little bit on the pass catching ability, but short rest, probably split snaps with Devontae Booker, given that, and the bad offensive line. I mean, we saw before he tore his ACL last year, he averaged 1 yard per carry in the almost 2 games that he played. He averaged 2.6 yards per attempt against Denver in his 10 carries. I don't have any confidence in anything out of the backfield from New York. And this is a showdown slate where we're going to have to make some exceptions.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I'm not really sure what the medical staff and the coaching staff is doing with Barkley. You have a guy who you invested in heavily, he's your former number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft, coming off an ACL tear. You have him out there for not even 50% of the snaps in week 1, and now he's on a short week, limited in practice. Why didn't he just sit out these first 2 games if he's going to be a 50% player playing behind a highly suspect offensive line? I don't understand it from that position. For DFS, because Barkley, we know the talent he has, he's at least in play for tournaments, but for cash games, low field type contests, I don't know how you get to him at his price. He's really similar in price to Taylor Heineke on the other side, who is going to have the ball in his hands every play. And I don't expect Washington to throw the ball a lot, but Heineke has some rushing upside. As far as median projections, I don't think those 2 are even close.
What about you, AB, for this backfield?
I'm looking at Booker because I fully expect the Washington football team to dominate this football game. And on a short week, you're going to put your franchise player running back in a position when this game is out of hand, or you can see that, hey, this one right here, we're just going to have to chalk this one up. And I think they're going to see that early on. I don't think they put him out there. I think you see a lot of Booker in that second half. And if you want to be different and get away from those people that are putting Barkley out there, you can definitely play Booker because he's going to get 10, 12 carries in that second half alone, I think, because they're not just going to throw the ball, because that defensive line is serious and they will get their their quarterback hurt. I think he's a backup quarterback, but maybe they think he's a franchise quarterback. But Danny Dimes is not very good.
No, Matt, he's not very good at all. And the truth is that there's still hope out there for him. If you talk to Giants fans, they're split. A lot of them will say they want nothing to do with him. Others say that, he's yet to develop yet. But the way I see this is when it comes to Daniel Jones, sure, he doesn't have Evan Ingram, and that's unfortunate. I know you had a decent amount of interest in Ingram in best ball drafts this summer when we did them on the Fantasy Football Channel. Follow that, by the way. Subscribe and check out all of our videos. I think you'll thoroughly enjoy it if you play season-long dynasty redraft, whatever it is. But he does have Kenny Golladay, who is, not long removed from that hamstring injury from last year, and then again in the preseason. He did play almost all of the snaps last week, though Sterling Shepard looked pretty good. So and Darius Slayton's at least a decent 3. So this isn't to say that Daniel Jones doesn't have weapons. I just don't know if he's going to have time to throw to him.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the receivers. It's great to have solid pass catchers, but if you can't protect, what are we even really doing with them?
Right.
Like, I think New York should be playing in 12 personnel 100% of the time to mask some of these issues. They're not going to. Jason Garrett actually is one of the least. He doesn't make any adjustments at all. They basically play 11 personnel out there, which is going to be really tough for Daniel Jones, especially if you're relying on like a running back to chip some of these guys. And I don't think you want Saquon doing that. So I'm just not sure what they're doing from a game planning perspective. As far as the team goes overall for DFS, though, Daniel Jones is going to have to throw. I don't think they're going to be very efficient, but at least with the receivers, you should have some value in like cheap, low A-dot receptions, like these underneath throws that maybe they can create some yards after catch. I don't see any other way they put up any sort of production. They're going to have to get the ball out of his hands fast. The crazy thing is I wanted to say, what if Barkley comes in at low ownership, AB, because when you have a talent, I won't say a generational talent, but when Barkley was healthy, I mean, he was filthy good. And I think he can get back to that, but man, he's being projected for only a 9% captain spot, but still almost 43% ownership at that price point. And he's not cheap. I wanted to say, hey, look, dude, this is a tournament option that could kill. I mean, we saw Josh Jacobs do it, and a lot of people were off of him. Matt and I didn't love Josh Jacobs last week either, but that ownership on Barkley is way higher than I would have expected at his price point, given all of the concerns and the uncertainty.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the ownership. I mean, it tells you either I would even go further away from it. If the ownership is already there, I definitely wouldn't go to it. I mean, not in that captain spot. I think you mentioned it was 9% in the captain spot. So if you do go to him, definitely put him in the captain spot, but I would kind of steer clear of him. And I would go more to Booker, maybe Sterling Shepard. He runs those short routes because they're not going to get anything long. They're not going to have time to throw the ball. Just ask the Tennessee Titans when they played Chandler Jones. If you're crushing the quarterback, he had 5 sacks in that game. So if you're crushing the quarterback, I don't care how many weapons you have on the outside, it's not going to matter. So I think that's what this defensive line would do with the Washington football team against the Giants. So short passes, you might get a guy like a Shepard that has 6 catches for, 70 yards, something like that. But it's not going to be stuff down the field because it's just not going to have time to do it.
So then, Matt, how do we approach the Giants? We can talk about a potential Washington onslaught, and I don't think that's crazy. I don't think it's crazy having a lot of Washington defense. I love Antonio Gibson. We'll get into all of that today. Even with Heineke at the helm, I think they'll move the football, and I think they'll just dominate time of possession, which, if that's the case, you want the ball in their hands, right? But what do we do with the Giants offense? We can't just ignore them entirely. So if we're prioritizing or ranking these guys, how do we make it work?
Yeah, I think you just look at the receivers because they're at the very least going to have those PPR situations. You're going to get points just from receptions. Even if they're not long, that's okay. So I think you want to target some of them. Sterling Shepard, like AB mentioned, he's going to run in and out of the slot. He plays a ton in the slot, and he's more of that low A-dot type player. So I think he has the best chance at it. But you could also look at Kenny Golladay. He's typically used a little more downfield. I don't think they're going to have success with that, but maybe they just throw him some more screens. They're really close in price. I think you can get to either of them. I would prefer Shepard. The same thing goes with Slayton. He's a little bit cheaper, but he's also used downfield. So I think if you're just trying to look at which receiver is going to see the most volume, which was borne out in week 1-2 when the Giants were constantly under pressure, Daniel Jones constantly under pressure, Sterling Shepard was the one they leaned on.
What about somebody like, if you think they're going to run a lot of 12 personnel?
No, I don't think they are. I think
You said you don't think they are.
I think they should. I don't think Jason Garrett's smart enough to figure this out.
Gotcha. Okay. I misheard you. Kyle Rudolph was a complete non-factor last game, but do you think Daniel Jones looks to get the ball out quick to somebody like Kyle Rudolph in this game, who played, almost 80% of snaps without Evan Ingram?
Maybe. Kyle Rudolph isn't really like a dynamic pass catcher, though. He's a red zone weapon. He's a big player. He did play a lot of snaps. 5 targets, was 4th most on the team. His ADOT was really low, so maybe that is something they try to do. I mean, 6.8 ADOT is super low, short of the sticks for sure. Caden Smith is a guy that also played a decent amount here. So you mentioned Kyle Rudolph, 77% of the snaps. Caden Smith was at 47. You can tell there's not a ton of overlap there, showing they didn't use a lot of 12 personnel. But even like Caden Smith out there, he's the min price. He's somebody you could maybe look to. As we'll get to later, salary is not really an issue. You can play whoever you want on this slate. But I think Rudolph and Smith are middling GPP options in the offense.
Brent our YouTube chat says, "Oh wow, just joined the stream and I'm a huge Bears fan. Love Alex Brown." Yeah, man. AB was with us all year most of the year, I think it was. AB, let me put a bow on the Giants and get your similar take on this. If we're looking to win a tournament, right? Who do you think has the most upside from the Giants? Because that's really what it's all about right now. I don't think any of us love anyone from the Giants at all. But is there anyone that you look at and you're like, okay, you know what? The ceiling there is enough for him to blow the top off and have a decent enough game to win me a GPP.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at first how you think this game's going to go, and then according to that. So I'm looking at Sterling Shepard because I think it will be a game dominated by the Washington football team. So short routes, he might catch a lot of passes, but they won't go for much. But you get points for receptions, the little bit of yards. If he breaks a tackle and now that 6-yard route turns into 18, I mean, that stuff starts to add up. So you look at Sterling Shepard, and then I'm looking at Booker. I would go away from Saquon Barkley because I think this game gets out of hand. And if you already have a running back that's kind of iffy already, and you only ran him 10 times the previous game, I think you pull him out of the game a little earlier than normal, and you put Booker in there. So I think Booker gets the bulk of the carries in the second half. I think by the second half, we'll already know that this game's over.
We also had a comment talking about several of them talking about Kadarius Toney. The guy played 5 snaps. He ran 4 routes and had, I think, 2 receptions for -2 yards, Matt. So
imagine if they use that first-round pick on a lineman.
Yeah.
Right.
Imagine.
They wanted Devontae Smith.
That would have worked.
Yeah,
it would have been better. Like Devontae Smith is like an alpha. Toney was a gadget player in college. I love Toney. He's got some development to do.
Yeah, he does. Look, Devontae Smith would have wasted away there, just like Justin Jefferson last year would have wasted away in Philly if Howie was smart enough to take him. God, what a disaster that was. All right, so are there any for either of you guys? Jump in. If not, we can move on. Are there any secondary or even like tertiary options, deep down on this depth chart for the Giants that we could look at that are super cheap in the event that we're paying up at a lot of positions elsewhere?
I think Caden Smith is someone you could look to. He's a guy that actually ran a decent amount of routes. He's only 10 behind Kyle Rudolph. He just didn't see any targets. It doesn't pop up in the box score, but he's literally the min price, 200. If you need somebody that cheap, he's someone you could use. He's going to be a low ADOT guy, similar to Kyle Rudolph. They're just not going to use their tight ends down the field when they're out there. And I would prefer him to Toney based on what you said, Laffy. Toney just played 5 snaps. Like Caden Smith was out there for 28. It's just a big difference.
Yeah. And like, okay, sure. On those 5 snaps, Kadarius Toney was targeted on 2 of them. So, maybe if he's on the field, they want to try and get him the ball. But it doesn't really matter, especially with the type of targets that he got in that game. I'm perfectly fine getting away from that. AB, I would assume you're pretty similar to us in this respect, that it gets pretty ugly once you get past the Shepherds and such.
Oh, absolutely. If you get to the second string, hell, I don't think first string is going to do anything, let alone second string. Put them in, they're not doing nothing.
All right, let's talk about Washington then. And by the way, happy to have all you guys with us. Forgot to mention that at the top of the show. as you guys keep coming in. And if you haven't hit that thumbs up yet, helps us greatly. If you enjoy the content, do that. Only takes a second. One, move the mouse or take the finger watching the phone, click that. We're in good shape. And if you hate the show, hit that thumbs down, but you got to hit it twice and subscribe to the channel. We're working on our way to 60,000 subscribers, and I can't do it without you. So I love you guys. Appreciate you hanging out with us every morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is, having fun on these strategy shows. Okay. AB Washington. Let's start with Taylor Heineke. He started a playoff game last year against Tampa and was actually, modestly impressive. I don't think this guy's particularly good. I don't think Ron Rivera wants to keep the ball in his hands. And I think they'll probably look to get the Antonio Gibson as much as possible. But what do you make of Heineke coming into this game where they are 3.5-point home favorites and should, as you pointed out, at least you would say, should have control of this game throughout?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking Ron Rivera coming in. Ron Rivera, I played for him. He was a defensive coordinator for our Bears team. So he likes to run the football. He wants to run the ball and play great defense. Coming into this game, the Giants know that too, though. So when the Giants stack the box, which I think they will, to try to stop the run, I think he will have. And if I'm the Giants, I'm going to make Heineke beat me. I'm not going to just allow Gibson to just run the ball down our throat. So I'm going to make Heineke beat us. Now you're talking about one-on-one coverage on the outside and his weapons, McLaren, you got Logan Thomas. Like these guys, I think, can have really big games. And as you loosen up that defense and make them back up a little bit, then Gibson later on in the game. But I'm not going away from Heineke. I think not just throwing the ball, but he can run the ball too, man. We've seen him scramble out, get yards with his feet. He can make big plays with his feet. So I really like Heineke here. I'm not sold on putting him in my captain spot yet, but I'm hoping maybe Matt can help me with that one.
Yeah, it's a totally reasonable take. Like, do they try and force Taylor Heineke, especially given that the Giants' run defense was at least semi-respectable last season, Matt? How do you see this playing out for the Giants' defensive approach?
Yeah, the Giants, I think, have an okay defense. I actually like some pieces they have. I think they're getting better on the edges. I like their pick Azeez Ojulari. He only played about half the snap, so he's just a guy that's going to have to develop into a larger role. But they have Leonard Williams, like Danny Shelton, Dexter Lawrence, a good defensive line. I do think Washington's offensive line will be able to defend them. With Heineke, I think if you're playing cash, if you're playing small field tournaments, he's probably the guy you look to in your captain spot. Again, I think, like AB said, they're going to rely a lot on the run, but luckily Heineke is at least somewhat involved in that capacity with his legs. I like Heineke's receivers, so I don't think he's going to have to do that much himself anyway with players like McLaurin and then Diami Brown, as we'll get to. They can do a lot for Taylor Heineke just because they're talented players themselves.
You know, what was interesting though last week, AB, is, they lose that game and by all accounts, it was a competitive game, right? Finished 20-16. I think we could all nod in agreement that Washington's going to be involved in a ton of low scoring games this year. I would think, and especially with Fitzpatrick out, but they still ran Gibson 20 times in that game. He still saw 5 targets. It does make you. I guess the question for me is, does Ron Rivera say, you know what, we'll take what's given to us, assuming that you're right about the New York's defensive game plan, and we'll let Heineke rip, or we'll lean on the guy that we know can get us there in Antonio Gibson? I think there's an argument for both of them, and I would assume all three of us are going to have plenty of lineups with Gibson and Heineke in them anyway.
Oh, absolutely. I don't just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing here, because when we say let it rip, I'm not talking about throwing the ball 40 yards down the field. I'm not talking about that.
I mean, take advantage of what the defense is giving them if we think they're going to sell out to stop the run. Yeah. Yeah,
no, for sure. The pass that he completed to McLaren last week, that was lucky as hell. Like the DB just missed the ball. He missed it. So I don't trust Heineke throwing the ball all over the field like that and pushing the ball down the field. But Logan Thomas on short passes. I mean, look at where Ron Rivera was and the tight ends where he was at. They were always pretty good, and they always got the ball. So if you just look at that, I like Logan Thomas tonight. I think he could be a really sneaky play in that captain spot. I can definitely see them driving the ball down the field and then Heineke throwing touchdowns to Logan Thomas. So I can see that. I don't know about pushing the ball down the field. I think the one-on-one coverages would definitely come up with not 40-yard passes, but some comeback routes or something like that. But Ron's not going to go crazy with Heineke, trust me.
Yeah, no, I don't think he will either. It is interesting though, Matt. De'Ami Brown ran a route on 24 of the 26 combined dropbacks between Heineke and Fitzpatrick. So wasn't particularly impressive, but nobody was. The only player with more than 4 targets was a running back. It was Antonio Gibson. I mean, McLaurin only had 4. Brown, I think, tied McLaurin with 4. Logan Thomas only had a few. So I don't want to look at last game with this, just the assumption that, all right, Brown didn't really get any looks, because nobody did. But in terms of opportunity, being on the field and being in a position to get those targets, the rookie, excuse me, the explosive young rookie actually was out there for almost every snap, running routes on almost every drop back. And I think we can at least be encouraged by that, right?
For sure. He's a guy that had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with North Carolina. His yards per reception is around 20. He's got great athleticism, used down the field quite a bit. Like AB said, I don't think they're going to be pushing it as much here, but the route share, the snaps, all of that gives you confidence using him today. And it comes down to price on both sites. And I want to stress, pricing is very similar on both sites today. So any DraftKings discussion you can use directly for FanDuel, because pricing is nearly identical. De'Ami Brown is just the pure stone chalk value play of the day. He's egregiously priced on both sites for a player who's going to be out there for every single snap. He's literally the wide receiver 2 now that Curtis Samuel's on IR, and it's not close. He was well ahead of Adam Humphries and any other player on this team.
Yeah. What do you see his role being like, AB, De'Ami Brown? Like, is this the type of guy that can break off, that we could see maybe Rivera try to get him to break off some long passes, or can we use him everywhere? Because if that's the case, especially at his price and how often he was on the field, I mean, already, honestly, the price point on him is just stupid low. I don't understand how they would screw this up, DraftKings, like they did, because I think it's just a clear error in pricing.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody's going to be on the field for those amount of plays and get targets,
right,
at this price, I mean, how can you not play him? He's one of those, like, I mean, I know my guy doesn't like to use the lock, but you got to play the guy in most of it, right? You have to play it in most. You have to play him in most of it, because if he breaks a big one and everybody has him, then you're in trouble. You're pulling from behind at that point. So, yeah, he will get some targets. He will get an opportunity. If this game does get out of hand, he might get even more plays. So, yeah, you play him. I mean, I wouldn't say play him in the captain spot, but I say you definitely play him.
And I think, as a professional or as a former pro yourself, how much of an impact does it have in the game plan, right? When your quarterback in week 1 goes down early in the game, and now you have to pull the plug on that, because we all know that Heineke and Fitzpatrick are very different quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Rivera went with more conservative approach? Like, what does that adjustment look like now that he's had several days several days of turnover, maybe to revamp what the game plan looks like with an entirely different quarterback? How much of a difference does that make, if at all?
I think Coach Rivera is conservative by nature, I guess. He's a conservative coach. He's a conservative player. Most defensive coaches are. They want to rely on their defense. They don't want to put the ball up in harm's way or being taken away in turnovers or something like that. So I think he's just conservative. I think we will see them run the football, but if we start to see those 8, 9-man boxes, then from the Giants, then they're gonna throw the ball. They're gonna throw it, and they're gonna give their receivers and their tight ends an opportunity to make plays down the football field. So it's gonna be predicated on what the Giants do, how they come in and try to stop them, what their game plan is. So if they want to come in and stop the run, which most teams do, that's the first thing you do. You stop the run. You make them one-dimensional. So if they come in and do that, then you can look for Heineke to play a big part in this win tonight.
Man, yes. Matt, AB calling the guy whose name is Riverboat Ron conservative.
Yes. He is, man. I'm telling you. He is. I don't know where the name came from. He might take a chance on a 4th down, but listen, he's not taking too many chances.
Man, I was thinking the other day when I thought you were on the show, I was thinking, who was the guy that that super chatted us to compare. I was like, what player did he compare you to?
Oh man,
Terrell Suggs.
It was the
Terrell
Suggs.
Yes. Why
I
are we
remember
bringing
that
that up
vividly.
again?
Because you look nothing like him. It's just hilarious. I mean, it's the worst comparison ever, but dude,
But
your
it hurts
reaction
my
to that
heart.
was one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
It really hurts my heart that there is somebody in this world that thinks I look like Terrell Suggs. That hurts me.
You don't look like him.
You can laugh about it because it was the most egregious thing ever. I don't know. Maybe he's a Packers fan and he's like, this will get him, you know?
Probably. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Matt, the Washington team, there's so much more to break down than New York, because New York, it's like, yeah, these guys could all be tournament plays because there's one game and two teams to choose from. But all in all, I mean, you have Heineke, you have Thomas, who AB just talked about. You have Brown, who we've already agreed, just at that price, I don't know what you're doing, not considering him given just the overall opportunity. And then Terry McLaurin. We'll talk about Gibson and close it out with guys like McKissick, but how are you approaching in terms of priority the wide receivers and the tight ends?
Yeah, if pricing wasn't an issue, it would be McLaurin 1, Logan Thomas 2, and then Diami 3. But obviously we have pricing to consider here. So I think Diami immediately shoots to the top as the best price adjusted value. And it's not because I think Diami has the best projection. He's just the avenue that opens up all the other studs in the slate. And from there, you can decide which Washington players you want to consider. I think everybody should be strongly considering Antonio Gibson because of game script. They don't really have another player like him in the backfield on the team. And then that leaves you one or two places where you might want to consider a Washington pass catcher. McLaurin's really expensive, but if I can get to him, completely fine with it. He's going to be the alpha for the team this year, as we saw last year. Logan Thomas has a consistent role too. They don't use a lot of 12 personnel, but Logan Thomas has one of the best tight end roles in football. He's a guy he took the position on late in his career. He's a former quarterback, but he played 100% of the snaps, 3 targets. It's just that nobody on this team had more than 5 targets in the first game. They just didn't throw the ball a lot, which kind of speaks to AB's point about Washington being kind of conservative over with Ron Rivera. I do think you want to target some of these players. If it were up to me, I would probably lean Terry McLaurin, then Logan Thomas, if you can afford it, using Logan Thomas as kind of like a consolation prize.
Do you have could you find how many routes McKissick ran in week 1? PFF for some reason isn't showing him.
I can get it for you right now.
Yeah.
Give me 2 seconds.
You're good, man. Yeah. Cause Gibson was that was what's kind of crazy to me, AB. And it's like, I know Ron Rivera talked about, and really just everyone talked about getting Gibson more involved as a pass catcher this year, which I think makes sense. But last year when you had Alex Smith out there, he loved targeting JD McKissick. And, you know, it was a 5-1 split in favor of Gibson getting targets in week 1. If that continues in any capacity, even if it's a 50-50 or 60-40 split in favor of Gibson, he's going to have some monster games this year as someone that wasn't really involved that much as a pass catcher last year and was far behind McKissick on third downs.
He ran 4 routes.
That's it. 4. Wow.
Well,
okay.
so
go ahead, AB, and then we'll get back to that.
They used him on third down as a pass blocker. So he blocked more than he ran routes. He pass blocked 6 times and then he ran 4 routes.
Crazy. Hey,
So,
go ahead, AB.
if the Giants are successful in stopping the run, let's say on first down, McKissick is going to get more reps because now they're in second and long and they're in third and long. Okay. So if they're bringing him in to pass block, are they saying that Gibson doesn't understand the pass protections or McKissick understands it better? Right. So you don't want to have a young quarterback out there and running back that's kind of iffy on pass protection. So McKissick could get more reps in this game. And if the Giants are stacking the box, I mean, they're putting one-on-one. And I like McKissick against any linebacker that the Giants have. And when we're talking about one-on-one or a defensive end, trying to cover him if he goes out in a route or a little quick route. So might not be a bad deal to maybe sprinkle him in some of your lineups.
That's definitely an interesting take. And I think if we're talking ownership, you know, everyone's looking at exactly what we're looking at from last week and saying, God, he only got 1 target. Gibson had 5. And now McKissick's ownership is super low, 15%. I don't feel like I don't want to captain McKissick. And I do think that we have to separate Alex Smith last year, who loved checking down to his running backs, particularly J.D. McKissic, from especially Fitzpatrick and then Heineke. I don't know how often Heineke does that, but Matt, I can say this much. Would I be shocked if the winning lineup had Gibson and McKissic in it in the same one? I honestly would not be that surprised.
That's actually something I just wanted to bring up. So I'm glad you did. It's a really low scoring game environment. And if this goes according to plan, like what bookmakers have projected with the 41 total, these are the games you see really weird things happen. These are a lot of the games where you see some crazy constructions, maybe some constructions that are taking on a lot of negative correlation win lineups. And with McKissic being in a lineup in addition to Antonio Gibson, I think you should ask yourself, how much does McKissic really have to do? And again, no Blair last week for Washington had more than 5 targets. So if McKissic does play a little more on third downs, gets a couple catches at his price, is he enough to enter the optimal lineup? And I think in certain situations he is, and that build is going to come in extremely owned. I want to preface this by saying this is strictly for large field tournaments, like your Millie Maker type tournaments, maybe $100,000 entries or somewhere around there. Otherwise, I'm probably not doing it, but I do think it's viable.
He's really, it feels like the pricing here is just very strange. I mean, McKissic, super cheap, Brown, super cheap. These are two guys that, one played 93% of snaps, one played 36% of snaps in the backfield last week. I'm actually surprised that McKissic isn't getting more ownership, but here we are.
I think it's because of Diami.
You're probably right, but what do we have him projected at?
He's too low. He's going to come up.
Yeah, he's definitely coming up. There's no doubt about that. I think McKissic will come up a little bit too. Any interest in guys like, and I'll go to you here, AB. Mm-hmm. Any interest in any of the players we haven't mentioned yet as far as skill players go? Like Adam Humphries is not an exciting player at all, and I don't think any of us would say that he is, but he was on the field for 60% of snaps. It just feels like if it's Humphries at 4,800 on DraftKings or Brown at 1,400 or whatever he is, everyone should be going to Brown. Maybe Humphries is an interesting tournament option.
If he's on the field for 60% of the snaps, I mean, that's the only way you're going to be able to help. You have to be on the field. Yep. You have to be on the field to catch a pass or to get an opportunity to get a touchdown or to be productive. So if you look at 60%, that's something. I mean, he has an opportunity. He's out there. They're going to try to take away some of their top players in this game. So some of these second and third options, they're going to have an opportunity to make some plays. Now, will they make the play when it comes? We'll see. But that's the question. That's why they're the third option and not the first option, because they don't always make these plays. So looking at Slayton, maybe. Slayton's, I was going to say this earlier. Sorry. We have to be okay with leaving money on the table. So many people are so cheap. Like, I do believe the winning lineup is going to have some remaining salary, a lot of remaining salary. So don't try to use all of your salary in this one.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like if you come up now, I wouldn't be actively trying not to spend all of my salary, but if I come up in lineups where I have salary left over, I'm not going to try and make adjustments to that either.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I would. Yeah, absolutely.
Matt, it looks like, I mean, Washington ran a lot of 3 receiver sets last game, so Humphrey should be on the field quite a bit. It's just he's not a high upside play.
Yeah, for sure. And Logan Thomas he's their only tight end they use for these 3 receiver sets. I think you're fine with Humphreys. Again, like they just didn't throw the ball a ton last week, so there's a lot of noise in some of these stats. Adam Humphries, what says he couldn't have been the guy with 4 targets and tied all of these receivers for the team lead? He was only 2 targets behind Diami and McLaurin. So it's not crazy to think that he could be the GPP winner of this group. I really think any of them could, because it's going to be a low volume attack. If one of these guys makes a defender miss a tackle, that could be the difference that decides a GPP, just because we're expecting a really low volume pass attack. I actually had an idea that I would. So AB and I talked a little bit before the show about Antonio Gibson being on the injury report. He had a shoulder injury and he did practice in full, but I just want to kind of ask like a coaching philosophy thing. If Washington gets up in this game, you have a guy like Antonio Gibson, who was forced into playing a ton of snaps last week because it's a 4-point game. You need your best players in the field. If they kind of wax the Giants like we're expecting, Could Jarrett Patterson get more work for this team? He's more of a 2-down back. We saw a ton of him in the preseason. He was electric, but he only played 7% of the snaps. And I think that's more because the game was so close last week. If it's out of control in this game, you think they take Antonio Gibson off the field a little earlier because he's already banged up?
Go ahead, Abby.
For me, the game can be out of control and it still isn't more than 2 possessions. Okay. Like a 17-3 game, to me, that's out of control. The Giants aren't going to come back.
Insurmountable.
Right? But
yeah,
it's not far enough to put in like a 3rd string running back or something like that, in my opinion. So I think McKissick would probably be the guy that would go in and something like that. That way you don't have to take him out when it's passing downs or something. You can just kind of go and run the offense. So yeah, I don't think we believe that there's going to be 40 points scored in this game by either one of these teams, you know? So like, it's just, I don't think it's going to get that far out of hand to put a 3rd string running back in like mid third quarter.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to touch on that too. When we use the phrase like wax them, to me at least, I think, 17-3 feels pretty insurmountable if you're the Giants, but
yes,
the Washington football team still only has a 22-point implied total here. They're still running with Taylor Heineke as their starting quarterback. So this could be one of those games, right, where it's 20-3 is the final score. And I don't think anyone would be scratching their heads wondering how it happened. They're still but the thing is, just throwing this out there, right? They're still only 3.5-point favorites. And, the Raiders on Monday are another good example. Like they came in and won that game. That game closed with a 3.5-point spread. So I think Washington controls the time of possession in this game, but their defense is very likely going to have a lot to do with it. Giants defense, they're not complete cellar dwellers, right? Like they're not as bad as some of these other teams, Matt. So I don't know. I would be shocked if this was an all around high scoring game. What's the total? Is the total under 40?
41.
41. Okay.
So like it's right there.
So what about with the Washington defense then, Matt? Because this could be one of those spots, and I got it. It drives me insane to even think about this. But if you guys remember a couple of years ago where the Patriots defense was in the optimal captain spot and the tournament winning spot, like 3 weeks that they played on showdown slates, and everyone's just going nuts over it. If Washington's defense was in the captain spot optimal today, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not recommending you do it, but I wouldn't be shocked.
In tournaments, I think you can. You're certainly not doing it for things, low risk contests like cash, anything like that. There's definitely a flex play consideration there, but not captain. Yeah, I think this is the game environment where this can happen because it's so low scoring. There's clear mismatches between the offensive and defensive line. The one issue that I have with it today is this is the time everybody's expecting it. So I do think the defenses are a little more owned today, particularly Washington. Again, like you mentioned, one way to get around that is putting them in the captain spot. But even then, you're still relying on a really low probability outcome for them to end up being in the GPP winning spot. Certainly can happen, but I'm not sure how much of it I'm going to have.
Thanks for the super chat, D. Owens. I'm assuming it's D. Owens and not Doans, but either way, he says, thoughts on De'Ami Brown and captain and then jam him in. AB, I don't think you need to. Like, I don't think you need to take all that salary because you can kind of do what you want anyway with this lineup or with this game.
Yeah, you can. You can put in so many different lineups. I'm looking at McKissick is 2,200. You got Booker, who I like in this game. I don't particularly lean towards Barkley being a huge part in this game. So I think Booker's gonna really get the bulk of those carries. When this game's over, he's gonna have more carries than Saquon Barkley, in my opinion. So, and like you just said, like you're not telling people to put Washington in that spot. I'll have a lineup with Washington in that captain spot. I will have one because I think if they score a touchdown and they hold the Giants to what I think they're going to hold them to, which is under 6 points, they might get 2 field goals. I think you're going to be sitting pretty good.
It's possible. It's sure. I mean, look, they're getting 6% captain spot ownership, which it's not egregious, but for a defense, that's definitely higher than we would expect to see. But yeah, it's not insane ownership at all. I mean, it's higher than Logan Thomas, which is kind of wild, but Here we are. Yeah, I don't know, Matt. Just to same question because super chat, but also I think it's a reasonable one. We talk about all the players, but if we're not talking strategy and lineup construction, which we're jumping into right in a second, it's not really helping people. Do you need to go full out punts at captain spot tonight?
So the thing is, I don't think Diami's a punt. He is based on price, but he's not like a 30% snap share kind of guy. He's going to play every single snap. So I do like taking receivers in the captain spot for big tournaments, and it has to be a big tournament. And it's because when you have these receivers in the PPR scoring format and they're real low scoring games, there's a decent chance they outscore the quarterbacks if they're the ones that are funneled the touchdowns. If there's, say, 15 completions for Washington today, Diami catches 2 touchdowns, he's going to outscore Heineke. And that's just because like he's considered a punt play because of price, and he's really not that. That's not his role.
That's a good point. Trendy now says they're talking about blowouts. Giants are a better team this year, and Redskins probably worse at the moment. Matt, you said we're talking potential game scenarios. Yeah, that's it. I mean, somebody tweeted me just this hateful thing about you and me the other day, Matt.
Oh, that's nice. You should have tagged me.
It was great. Just, straight ad hominem attacks over a football game because you have loyalty to a specific team. Anyway, and he's like, oh, and all you do is talk. I'm paraphrasing. All you do is talk shit on the Raiders. And then he finished the show, dude. I said, I think the Raiders cover 3.5. If that's talking shit on the Raiders, saying I'm betting the Raiders to cover at 3.5 point dogs. I don't know what to tell you.
I said some mean things about the Raiders, so I gotta live up to that one.
Yeah,
I bet the Ravens, so that should have been directed at me, not you.
It actually, to be fair, was directed far more at you than myself.
Well, I didn't see it, but that is deserved. I did think the Ravens were going to cover that game, and I was wrong.
Well, they have. I actually, and AB would appreciate this, but Max Crosby, man, I DM'd Matt. I was like, this guy is nuts. Mm-hmm. He's good.
Crosby.
Yeah, for the Raiders. Vegas, their defensive end.
Oh yes, he is. He is good. He is.
He was just eating them up.
Yes. Oh yeah. I did watch that game. That was a weird ending to that game right there, wasn't it?
It's crazy. Nobody got pressured worse than Lamar Jackson in the entire week. So that was nuts. All right, let's do this before we go to lineups and build one here. AB, let me ask you this. Are you looking towards any kickers in what could be a low scoring game? And is there anyone we haven't touched on yet that you think we should?
Oh man. Well, who's going to be the kicker for Washington? Looks like Eddie is Panero.
He's going to be out. I think. I don't think they promoted him.
Okay. It still says questionable up here. You got Hopkins and Gano. I mean, if there's a kicker I'm looking at, it would have to be Hopkins. That's
Dustin Hopkins. I don't know shit about field goal kickers, man. I just look at who's in the player pool.
Well, if you're in the NFL, I would think like if they get inside the 40, they get inside the 40, an NFL kicker should be able to knock some of these through. So, and that's what you'll need in a 20-9 type of game or 24-10 type of game. That's what you're going to need. You'll need that kicker with that 45-yard, 50-yard field goal to give you some points that a lot of people might not be on. So they're definitely in play. In a game like this, when people are going to, let's say if McLaren comes out or Logan Thomas, they come out and they have very similar games that they had last time where they only get 4 targets or 5 targets, then the kicker beats them both with 2 long field goals,
Yeah, Dustin Hopkins last game, Matt, he made 3 field goals, one of them 48 yards, but he attempted 4. I'm not saying that you just assume that's going to happen again, but if that game is anything similar, just in terms of a low scoring affair, we got a 41 point total, 2 low implied totals. You could see a kicker in this game finish with 12, 15 fantasy points.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the low scoring environment where kickers become a little more attractive because their field goals matter more. When you have a ton of touchdowns being scored, there's just a higher likelihood that some of the pass catchers or the backs outscore them. In these low scoring environments, a field goal just goes a lot further.
All right, let's do a lineup build here. First, though, I want to say what's up to our sponsor, Jock Market. If you guys haven't checked them out yet, Jock markets turn fantasy sports into a stock exchange. What does that mean? I'll tell you. Forget waiting until the end of the game to make money. Jock market, they allow you to buy and sell shares of a player in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all shares at the end of the night. You got daily markets for baseball, basketball, hockey, and PGA, and of course, football. Every minute, every second, any match, any game. If you use the pregame IPO to pick up shares of your favorite players, you can buy, then sell, or hold those shares based on your analysis in the game. So if you really like somebody prior to kickoff, prior to a game, you can buy those shares up at the pregame IPO at a cheaper price. And then if your analysis pays off, sell them, or you sell them at a loss, whatever you have to do. There's a lot of analysis that goes into it. And if you think you understand it better than other people, it's a perfect way to take advantage of that edge. If you use the promo code Awesemo, you get a $50 bonus on your first deposit. Up to $50 on your first deposit. Use the promo code Awesemo. It's exclusive for Awesemo members too. So go to Jock Market, download the app in the App Store or the Google Play Store. Use the promo code Awesemo, get up to $50 and check it out. I think you guys will enjoy it. That is Jock Market, JOCKMKT. All right. Since AB is with us for the first time this season, and Jordan, if you want to pull this up on the screen, shout some love to your boy Jordan Klein in chat. As always, man produces 100 shows a day, gets up at 5 a.m. on the West Coast, putting in work. AB, we'll go with you first. Who are we going at captain?
Oh man, safe pick.
No, let's go large field tournament. We can get wild if we want.
I am going. I'm going the Washington football team defense.
All right, let's do it.
Yes.
Okay, so projecting low scoring game, Washington just stymies this offense.
I don't have a lot of trust in Washington's offense. I don't want people to think I have a lot of trust in their offense either. So, and the Giants have a decent defense. They just don't have a top defense like Washington.
All right, let's do it, Matt. So if you want to get Washington in, they're 8,400 at captain spot. Let's talk about the first flex here.
Yeah, so you need a defensive score, something like that. It means the Giants are probably losing this game. So Washington has the turnover opportunities, the chances for sacks, fumbles, interceptions. With that, they should be playing with a positive game script. So Antonio Gibson makes a lot of sense with Washington at captain.
Okay. I love Antonio Gibson here. So we're going for the correlation, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you said we're trying to talk about how the games could play out in chat, you have to tell yourself a story, especially if you're hand building lineups. Like you have to be able to try and predict what the game flow will be, how it's going to look. And even if you're wrong, if you were right, that's how it would have played out and it would have benefited you. In a spot like this where AB's throwing Washington into the captain spot, Antonio Gibson being there makes a whole lot of sense. Let's see. All right, I'm going to go. Just because Washington football team is in the captain spot doesn't mean that the Giants can't score. That's a big misconception. Like if the Washington has 2 defensive touchdowns, that actually benefits Daniel Jones and Sterling Shepard and guys like that, because now you're forced to throw the football. So I'm going to throw Sterling Shepard in here. I think right now, especially with Galladay still working his way back to 100%, I think Shepard is the clear number 1 in this offense. So we've got Washington at captain, Gibson, Shepard, 3 flex spots to go. Who do you have, AB?
I really like Booker, man. I like Booker. I don't, on a short week, I just don't, I know he's a special talent, but Saquon Barkley, I just don't see how you put him out there on the field in a short week like this against a team like this. If this was a terrible defense, okay, I could understand it. But we're talking about one of the top, if not the top defensive lines in the NFL. I'm not putting him out there. I'm pulling him when this game seems out of hand. I'm going Booker.
All right. Well, it's a large field tournament. We're getting no point in not getting wild here, Matt. Now we've got 10-6 per player remaining. 2 spots. Who do you got?
Yeah, we can play anyone we want. Literally anyone we want. Yeah. We have enough salary for it. I think you probably want to look at Daniel Jones just because you have both pass catching backs. You have the pass catching back in Booker and Shepard already in there. So you're already committed to not doing a full Washington onslaught. So I'll say Daniel Jones.
What do you think about like a Terry McLaurin here? If you have Gibson, you have Washington. Do we go with one Washington skill player, or do we throw in, say, Kenny Galladay in hopes that Like, because with this build with Washington up top, we are building it with the assumption that Washington's going to score. They need to score to be the winning captain, right? Unless it's just a hideous game. So I don't know, Matt. Is it the wildest idea to throw Galladay in there? And it sounds crazy, but
we're already playing for chaos. I think you can honestly do either. Like, this is a chaotic game. If this lineup wins what we have right now, this game is going to be just wild, and not wild as in like a 75 point over under shooting way over the total. It's going to be wild, like just not what you expect.
Like Washington back-to-back drives where they get defensive touchdowns.
Like ugly wild.
Yeah. And then Daniel Jones just has to throw and throw, even if he's under pressure, completely abandon the run.
Yeah.
Go Galladay. I think McLaurin is fine as well, but all of that works. Again, it's just a thought exercise here, seeing what works and what plays out. This probably isn't a lineup that I'm going to play, but it's interesting to see how they shape up. We got that out of the way. And by the way, we got over 500 people watching. Happy to have all you guys with us, but less than 100, like 83 likes on 500 watches. So if we could improve that tally even marginally, I would be forever grateful to you guys and girls.
Do it for AB.
Do it for AB.
Your boy. Come on.
Do it for your boy. First show of the season. I mean, come on. And I think it's been pretty fun. And another thing too, if you guys haven't checked out all of our tools at Awesemo, ownership, we talk about this, the top stack tool, boom bust tool, the Express Weekly Pass is super, super cheap. You go to awesemo.com/join, and it has every tool for Showdown, for the single game slate, for tiers. It's got a lot of main slate stuff, the lineup builder. And if you want to go all out, you want to make a legitimate investment with an annual spot, you can get NFL yearly pass or all access Awesemo plus platinum for the entire year, month, week, one sport, any sport, all these tools built by the #1 ranked DFS player out there. Awesemo himself. You know him as Alex Baker. You probably know him as Awesemo, but his name's Alex Baker. And he's won millions of dollars with these very tools that are on the site. If you want to check him out, maybe you want to get into UFC or NASCAR, PGA or esports or basketball coming back up, baseball winding down, all of that. We got tools for all of them, the best tools you're going to find out there. Awesemo.com/join. And if you have questions, you can hit me up on Twitter at Laffy_D. My DMs are open. All right, best bets to wrap this one up. I'll go first. I know we've talked a lot about how this game's going to play out, but I'm going Antonio Gibson over 15.5 rushing attempts. I just think this is the spot where even if they are struggling to move the ball on the ground a little bit, Ron's going to try and get the ball to Antonio Gibson. He saw 20 attempts and 5 targets last game in a spot that they lost. So assuming that they have the lead, I love the over 15.5. I think you could get up to 20 again for Gibson. And I'm also going over 89.5 total yards, rushing plus receiving yards for Gibson. If McKissick was out there just as a pass blocker, only ran 4 routes, Gibson more than tripled his routes run, had 5 times as many targets, 4 times as many targets. Sorry. These are just really interesting spots to me that I'm looking to get to. I like the overs on Gibson today, and I think all season he's going to be used even more in the passing game than he was last year. Matt, what do you have as a bet today? It could be prop, spread, total, whatever you want.
I think I got to redeem myself against the spread after people are in your mentions and not mine about my bet with the Baltimore Ravens. If you couldn't gather already, I do favor Washington. I agree with everyone in chat that this game is going to be close, but if you can find this at a field goal, I see it hovering at 3.5 at most books. I would try to get this at a field goal if possible. And then just one prop I think that's interesting is Daniel Jones rushing prop at 20.5 yards, because we do expect him to be under pressure a lot. Unlike the college game, sacks don't count as negative rushing yards, but with pressure, you're probably going to expect Daniel Jones to scramble a lot here. So that's sitting at 20.5. Maybe you can find a better number. I prefer betting the spread, but that's something I would look at too.
I like that rushing prop a lot. AB, what do you got for us?
On what are we choosing it from?
Anything. I mean, if you like the over, the under, the spread, whatever it is, any prop, no matter what.
I'm definitely taking the under in this game, and I take Washington to win it outright. I mean, they're gonna win this game. They're gonna win it pretty handily. So if you want to get crazy, and I don't know, if you find a bet where they're giving you, if you're giving 7 to Washington or 6.5, and you're gonna get paid more for that bet, I'd take it. Me personally, I'd take it because I think they're going to beat these guys up.
You can bet the alternate lines. Yeah, for sure. And over on DraftKings now, they have these same game parlays. I would assume you could take Washington. You can lay the points with Washington and you can bet the under. That's right. At plus 300. So you want to get wild.
Get wild, man.
There's wild for you. Anyway, that'll do it for us. As always, follow AB at Alex Brown 96 on Twitter, Matt at Matt_Gajeski, myself at Lafayette_D. That's LOUGHY_D. And shout out your boy Jordan Klein in chat before we head out. Fella's got a long day ahead of him and a marathon show with me and Matt Savoca coming up in just an hour. The Sunday matchup show coming up in an hour. We go through every single game meticulously, picking out everything you need to know. So we'll catch you back here for the next one. Thanks as always for watching, guys.